for tuning in. This is Selena and
Iman.
Together we make you plus happy. Each week we bring you someone who challenges us to define success and happiness on our own terms with a dose of laughter.
Remember to like and subscribe at You Plus Happy Podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram at You Plus Happy. Hey, Selena.
Hey, give me 1 second. I have a surprise.
Okay, should I be scared?
No.
Okay.
Happy birthday! Happy birthday, Mom!
Oh, I appreciate it. That's cute. I was like, what is she about to do? What's happening?
Yeah, so wear this for you.
Okay. Wear it on my behalf.
Yes.
So Selena and I usually spend our birthdays together. Well, oh yeah, I think we've spent almost every birthday together.
Well, until you left me, yes.
Except for last year. I think that was the first one we missed.
And that was because of Roro.
No, last year I was here. Remember, I came in.
I know, and I couldn't see you because of Roro.
Oh yeah.
Because one of us would have traveled for at least one of the birthdays.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't because Australia won't let me in. So
yeah, it's hating. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything fun planned?
So I'm going to dinner tonight with some friends, dinner and music, and then there's like a speakeasy restaurant bar that we'll go to after. So
ooh,
it should be fun. You know, I love live music, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, I know you're gonna have fun.
Yeah, I wish you were here to celebrate with me, but
me too.
You'll be there in spirit.
Me too. That's okay. I'm doing dry February.
Oh,
I'm 5 days in. I don't know how long I could go, but so I wouldn't have been able to drink.
Tonight will not be dry.
Girl, I don't know how long I'm gonna make it. I really don't.
You can do it. I have faith in you.
That's what's up though. Do you have anything else to share before we get into who the guest is?
No, not really. What about you? Anything fun happen this week?
No, this week is about you.
Oh, it has nothing to do with my birthday, but I had a moment of I guess growth on my part. So from that, I'm a year older now, but so last week we were talking about I forgot how we worded it, but like if something goes wrong in a situation, rather than throwing that whole situation away, like addressing the specific things that are wrong with it. So I actually put that into practice this week because I was very tempted to just be like, I'm done.
Yes.
Like I'm not dealing with this. And I was like, wait, Iman, like what's really bothering you? I was like, okay, it's really these two things. So I won't share what it is, but I took some time to really just focus on those two things rather than just being like, I'm done with this, which is usually my default. So I was proud of myself.
I know that is your default.
What's up? This isn't working.
That's so good. I'm proud of you. See, you growing. You a year older.
Growing.
Look at yourself. Just all growing up. I genuinely didn't think of anything to talk about this week because I was thinking about your birthday. Yes. Yeah. I can come to Australia if I quarantine for 14 days. I heard that on the radio. So
wow. How long would you stay? Wait, really?
Yeah, they let us read or do it. So I feel like, why can't I do it?
Well, I mean,
y'all got to listen to the podcast so I could be famous, so I can go to Australia and see my friend.
You hear that, listeners? You're like, they let the president do it, so I should be able to.
Well, hello, Rita Ora is not the president, okay?
I know.
But they're like, I got it.
Mhm.
Okay. I really don't have anything for this week, y'all. I did say some things in the episode, so hopefully you get a lot out of it. We're back to guests, so I hope you all enjoy. And speaking of
Yeah.
guests,
So this week we have Simona Costantini on, and we're very excited to have a chat with her. Simona is an intuitive life coach and host of Happiness Happens podcast. Simona guides busy entrepreneurs to heal by reframing their disempowering thoughts and realigning in their desires to meet their overall purpose so they can have a life and business they're excited to wake up to. She helps them step into their magic by guiding them to find their confidence and master their mindset so that they can get out of their own way, see results, and live a bold, beautiful life on their own terms. Simona blends spirituality, energy, and meditation into her practice to help her clients tune in with themselves so they can serve on a higher level. She believes that having a deep connection to yourself is the most important relationship. So we talked a little bit about that on the podcast. She's on a mission to enlighten people to reach their highest point through increased self-awareness, gratitude, and helping them change the story they tell themselves so they can live life on a purpose, life of purpose that is aligned to them.
and without further ado, we welcome
Simona.
Hello. Oh wait.
Hi, Simona.
Oh my god.
Hello. Thank you so much.
I'm
Sami
so
Man.
Which? Oh wait, hold on. Which one? I wasn't looking at the screen properly.
So I'm Iman.
Okay, amazing.
and I'm Selena.
Hi. It's
Selena,
so lovely
hi.
to meet
Nice to
you.
meet
Same
you.
here.
I'm
So
so
excited
excited
to
to chat with you. Thank you so much for the invite to come onto your show. I'm really
Of
excited.
course, of
Thank you for
course.
being here.
Of course, absolutely.
All right, so we'll hop right in. So our first question is just how did you get started with life coaching and your journey into being a life coach and starting your own podcast?
That's such a good question. I started as a podcaster and then it transitioned into life coaching and my business. So I can give you the backstory. And I always tend to share different parts of the story depending on like what we're talking about. But essentially it was 2018 and I woke up one day in the summer and I was so miserable. Like I hated everything about myself. I hated my like the way that I looked. I hated my body. I hated the way I acted. I hated that I was gossipy. I hated that I talked badly about people. Like everything, every single thing. And so I was constantly complaining to my fiance. And he finally looked at me one day and he's like, if you are so upset and so miserable, he's like, why don't you just change it? And I was like, what? I was like, what did you just say? And he was like, change it. Like, you don't have to stay stuck. So then it became this like whole long journey of personal development. I went to therapy. I saw a therapist for almost a year and she was amazing, helped me through so many different things. And what I learned the most throughout being like in that time with her, I kept thinking to myself, like, there has to be somebody else in the world that feels the same way that I do. There must be somebody else who feels so stuck and who feels so miserable. And I was like, I need to find a way to help people feel less alone. So then I started my podcast January 2019. So it's been 2 years. And I started my podcast like with the intention of simply just helping one person. That's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to help one person feel differently, show up differently, think differently, regardless of, what may have happened, their circumstances from before, because, we all have different experiences that bring us to where we are, but we also all have a choice. Sometimes the choice is easier for other people, like for some people than others, but ultimately everything in your life comes down to a choice, right? So then from there I was podcasting for a little bit and then I started interviewing different people and I started being introduced to like the world of coaching and I was like, what is this? I was like, this is really cool. So then I started dabbling into life coaching to begin with. And then I actually shifted into business coaching for a bit. And then I was like, no, we're going to go back to life coaching. So I went back to life coaching. And I do life coaching specifically for service-based entrepreneurs. So, you know, people who are, service-based entrepreneurs, mostly online, especially right now in this pandemic. But that's kind of how I've gotten to where I am right now.
I have a lot of follow-up questions, but I'm not.
Okay. Me too.
One is, so you became overall, it's like a life coach, right? So was there any like certification you needed? Did you need to like, was there any, schooling or anything that went along with it?
Totally. So there are so many certifications that you can do and so many different things to get your credentials up. I didn't do any type of certification or anything like that. At the like when I first started, I did different coaching programs. So I joined a couple of different group coaching programs, worked with a coach one-on-one and kind of to try and understand the industry and how it worked. And then I did find a coaching program, a life coaching program. It's like a go at your own pace, like a self-enrollment type of thing. So I'm still working through it. It's been 2 years. It's just so low on the priority list because the way that you sort of like coach and help people is through your lived experiences, but it's so much more than that, right? Because you need to know how to like hold space for people and how to be able to guide people to go deeper within. Because as a coach, like you're not sitting there telling other people how to fix whatever it is that's coming up for them. You're guiding them to be able to go deeper and access that place of self-compassion and empathy and self-love. So, yeah.
And with your real quick, the therapist, the first therapist you went to, was that the one that you stuck with for a year?
Yeah.
Okay, you got lucky.
Yeah, you did get lucky.
You got a lot of stories about finding a
got through multiple. Yeah.
You know what's funny? I was one of my clients earlier in 2020. He came to me and he was like, I'm in therapy and it's just not working. Like he's like, I just like they just don't understand. And I was like, interesting. But when I was searching for my therapist, I was searching for her online because I didn't even know where to begin. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know what to even begin with. And I started looking for like life coach. So I was searching for a life coach because I wanted to find what my purpose was. You know what I mean? And so I was searching for a life coach. So she ended up being more of like a creative therapist, and she was just really relatable. And as soon as I met her, I was like, okay, I was like, this really, really works. And then, we dove into different areas together. She was awesome. She was so awesome. And I know how rare that is. So it's so true.
I always like to remind the listeners, like, if you want to get therapy, like my experience, the first one wasn't a good fit. And so it was nice that people who told me about therapy, they told me that may be part of your experience where you have to try different ones. So that's something I always want to remind people. You got lucky. Right? And hopefully everyone gets lucky. But my point is, like, don't give up if you don't get your fit on the first go round. So I think that's an important note.
It's so important to know, because it's like, it's like with anything, like anything that maybe isn't perfect or isn't the right fit or is a no instead of the yes that you were maybe hoping for. Everything is always a redirection to where you're sort of meant to be guided to go next, right? And what you're sort of meant to tap into next. And so when you can start looking at like things not going your way with a different perspective, that it's meant to happen that way. It always makes sense when you look backwards, right? Everything always makes sense as to why it happens that way when you look back. We never understand it in the moment, though. It's so hard.
Yeah.
You brought up a really interesting point where you were saying how you woke up and you were just not happy. And your fiance, I don't know if he's husband now, but fiance at the time was just fix it. And it seems like such an easy response and such an easy, like, oh, why didn't I think about that? But the actual doing of that is a bit more difficult. So how did you just start to shift that thinking and kind of go in a different direction?
So that is such a good point. And I was so annoyed with him for saying that, because I was like, you don't understand all of the things now that I have to do and dive into. But I think though, like, one thing that I always think about is that people are mirrors for us, right? So you look at somebody else and you see something that maybe annoys you about them or whatever, oftentimes it's something that like annoys you about something that maybe you do, maybe not the exact same thing, but similar. And so him calling me out was more so like kind of like the wake up call that I needed to know that like you can't go on living your life like this and like making people walk on eggshells around you. You know what I mean? Like I was a very, very different person then. And what the hardest thing about it was though, is I've always had a very bubbly personality. I've always been someone who's very approachable. On the outside, I've always looked like I have everything put together, super happy, all this different stuff. So it's really frustrating to be like one way on the outside and like not matching that on the inside, and not having people understand like how you feel on the inside, and like also not being able to explain it because people don't understand. You know what I mean? People talk about, not so much anymore, it's gotten a lot better, but people used to talk a lot about therapy and be like, oh, like I went to the therapist. And you're like, no, like I went, like you have to own it, right? But I'm sort of not really answering your question fully, but essentially the steps that I took to get there, the first one was that wake up call. And then the second one was like the realization that something had to change. Even though I didn't know what it was that had to change, something had to change. So then I started like listening. I wasn't very spiritual then as much as I am now. And I started listening to like the little different like nudges of things that would sort of pop up. I'd be like, okay, like I feel like searching for a life coach. So let me just go online and like see what happens. So you have to take some kind of action towards, no matter how big or how small the step is, going in the direction of any kind of change when you know you want to make a change, I think is the first best step. But before that, even like you need to just realize that something has to change, because that's the biggest part that people get stuck in, is they don't have that realization yet. And you know, a lot of the times we don't want to admit that we're the ones that caused the problem. You know what I mean? We don't want to admit the ones that our attitude like was not good towards ourselves, or that we're not very nice to other people. Like no one wants to admit that about themselves. So it was really like admitting that to myself and being really honest with myself, and then kind of being able to start to shift it from there, essentially.
Oh wow, it's great advice.
For
sure.
I'm glad. I'm really glad.
Did you have any other follow-up questions, Iman?
No.
Okay. So this is like shifting a little, well, not really, but in our society, we talk about success so much, but we never talk about the failures on the road to success. So when do you feel like you started this journey in like, what did you say, like 2018? And so from then to now, like what have been your roadblocks with like your hurdles?
Oh my gosh. My biggest hurdle that still, even now, I just know how to navigate it a little bit differently, holds me back, is my belief in myself. That is the biggest number one roadblock that I've always had. That, and how easily I'm really impressionable. So I compare myself to other people a lot. It's really interesting too, when you have something like social media with all of these people, like, okay, if you're in the coaching space, for example, all of these people are constantly posting about how they make $5,000 to $10,000 a month. The easiest way that you can make 5K, how to get to your first 10K. You know, this is how you should do content. This is how you should write. This is how you should show up. All these shoulds. And so for me, it's like really been about like having to put the blinders on and like just being able to extend so much gratitude and love for all of the people who are putting their stuff out there, because everyone at the end of the day is just trying to build their business and live their purpose, right? But it's at the flip, like on the flip side of that is kind of like, you know, I don't always have to get sucked into all of that, which I was letting myself for so long. And then, you know, doing a couple things and being like, no, I can't actually do this. Like, I don't, why me? Why? No, you know, and then going backwards, and then, you know, taking a couple steps forwards and then going backwards again. And then working with, I worked with a bunch of different coaches, and because I was so much of a people pleaser, because I just wanted to make other people happy and proud and whatever, I would adapt to what they thought I should do with my business, to what they thought I should be in this world, or how I should show up and all this stuff. So I really had to like quiet the noise and really tune into like, what is it that I want? Like, what am I here doing? Why am I doing all of this for? If to be, upset every single day and confused and not being able to like move forward on the path, but I think, the idea of success that you were talking about, I think success is so relative. Like your idea of success is different than mine, is different than whoever's listening. You know what I mean? And so to say that a business owner wants to make 5K a month, that's kind of like you're assuming something about somebody else that might not necessarily be true. And then you make them feel bad for only wanting to make 2K a month. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So I don't know if that answers the question, but.
No, it does.
Okay.
Real quick, is part of this just hit me. It's part of people pleasing, like wanting, is that part of validation for you specifically? What you said was like, you were like, when you got into this new field, it's almost like whenever we do something new, we want validation even more than usual, right? I don't know. That's what I feel like. And so if you're doing this new with the life coaching, you want the validation that you're insider, right? With the other life coaches, is that part of like the people pleasing thing?
Yeah, it is. And it's kind of like, I think that we want validation from all the people that are around us. Like, I know for me, I just wanted validation from my family. I just wanted validation from my loved ones that, instead of being met with like, well, why would you do this? Like, this doesn't make sense. Like, why, you know what I mean? And so for me, being a people pleaser, yes, it's part the validation piece, but then it also stems from like all these times when I was younger that I did something wrong, you know what I mean? And got in trouble and made someone feel bad and all of those different things. So being a people pleaser comes from, I think, in my opinion, so many different ways. It comes from your past. It comes from the stories that you constantly tell yourself, the stories that you let other people tell you about who you are and how you are and all the, like, how you should be based off of the circumstances you had growing up. And then it is like that validation piece, because we all want to feel accepted, right? We all want to feel understood. We all want to feel like we're part of something bigger and that we're really making an impact in some shape or form, whether you're doing it online or offline, right? We like to feel accepted by the people who are around us. So I would say, yeah.
And I know, so that's one thing that I struggle with too, is the people pleasing side of it. And I know in your podcast, you mentioned that you're a recovering people pleaser.
Yes.
Or recovered.
No, recovering.
Recovering. Okay. So it's still in the process. And just kind of like what steps have you taken, or how are you kind of going along that journey? Because I know there's a lot of people that are in that boat where it's like, they're so used to, for whatever reason, doing whatever is going to make other people happy and not really taking that time to reflect on, wait, how does this really make me feel? So like, what are the steps that have helped you so far?
I love that question. It's a really, really good question. And I say like still recovering now because I find so I run two businesses. I have a coaching business, but then I also have a podcast production business. So in the podcast production business, it's so responsive. You know what I mean? Like if you want the client, you have to answer. You know what I mean? And so it's about how do you create boundaries around your time and your space in your life? And what actions are you taking? Like you're saying, like what are the specific steps? Is more so, if I think back to like the whole journey, I had to first understand where that idea of like people pleasing came from. Why was it so important for me to please that person in specific? What did it mean and like, honestly, you guys can like journal out on these questions for everybody who's listening. Like, what does it mean to have that person's like acceptance of me? What does it mean to have that person validating me? Right. And so, why is it that I feel like I need to please that person in that moment? And then what's the repercussion if I don't, And then I also think about on like the flip side of that, it's like being able to pause before you react. So we live in like a society that is so reactive. Like someone texts you on your phone and you're expected to reply. And it's like, maybe you're not available, like, or someone calls you and you're in the middle of doing something else and it's like, why didn't you answer my call? And it's like, because I was busy, like for every other reason. And so one thing that I had to put into practice, like really, really fast, I put into practice that if someone was asking something of me, I would open the message, I'll read it, but I don't respond until I take a step back and think about, how is this going to impact my day? Do I have the time to do this? If I don't have the time to do it today, how can I properly plan my time, or like give them a response that might be more like helpful and still supportive, but while still being like mindful of like the own boundary that I need to create in my life? Because at the same time, like, you know, when you have this trait of being a people pleaser, your whole life gets so muddled with all of these different things, because you say yes to things you don't want to say yes to. But also, as I'm talking, it makes me like just go even deeper. Like, I feel like it also, maybe like, let me know what you guys think about this too, but I think it comes from this like thing of like a fear of judgment almost. So like, let's even take an example of before this pandemic started and we could go out places. I don't know what it's like where you guys are. I think Australia is fine, right?
Yeah, we're starting
okay.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Enjoy. But over here, we're like, we've been in lockdown this whole time. And so anyways, but before, when you could go out and like someone would text you and be like, do you want to go out tonight? And it's like, no, I don't. You know what I mean? But to say no, you're kind of like, okay, well, this person's going to think that I'm lame, or they're not going to think I'm fun, or they're going to think that I don't want to hang out with them. So, and you're like, okay, fine, whatever. I'll sacrifice my own mental well-being in the night that I was going to take to like, you know, relax and just enjoy my night after a long week. And I'll just go out, and then you're resentful. You know what I mean? But then you're resentful to the person, and then you're resentful to yourself because you didn't stick to your boundary. Right. So, in terms of like specific, like actionable things that you could implement, I would really like think about where the idea of like needing to people please is coming from, but then also every time you're going to go and respond, just open the message and then just pause. Like, you don't need to reply right away. Something that I'm still constantly practicing all the time, because sometimes you're just in like the mindset of like, okay, go, 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 and like just get things done, and like, yep, I'm going to answer. And it's like, you're like, wait, what did I commit to? What did I say?
Yeah. That's such great advice. And I think just going off of the example that you gave where you might not want to go out, there's another podcast that I listened to, and they said that if you say no, you don't have to give it explanation either. Whereas I think as a people pleaser, you want to say no, and then it's like all the reasons why. But
so true.
Setting those boundaries and just saying, I just don't feel like it, which is very hard to do.
It's
but
so hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard to do. And I even think about like when I used to work in corporate. So I just like, I was working in corporate beforehand, and I just went full time in my business this January. And all of the times where I would like answer a text message, or like if someone needed something from me, constantly like, yes, 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 no problem. And, you know, even like if you need a day off, it's like, oh yeah, I need a day off to go to the doctor's. Like, you don't have to give the example, like the reason. Nobody needs to know. It's your business, right? And so I think we're just like so used to sharing everything and putting everything like on the stand all the time that it's like hard to not now. I don't know.
Yeah.
When you guys both, did I cut you off, Simona?
No, go ahead.
When you guys brought up people pleasing, I was like, huh, I don't have that problem. But then when you started describing it, I was like, oh my God, I do have that. And then I was like, mine would be more, and this is for the listeners too, mine is fear of rejection. Like, so if I tell someone no, I'm scared that they won't ask me out again, or they won't want to talk to me anymore because I don't do the things they want me to do. And so I always say yes, even when I don't feel like it, unless it's something that's going to be really expensive that I don't want to do. I'm like, no, I'm not going to. And I'll do it even if I don't want to. But sometimes I do want to chill. It's rare, but sometimes I do want to chill out. And I never ever say no, because I'm scared that even people I've known for years, but I'm scared that they'll be like, well, I'm not going to ask Selena out again because she said no last time. Or just that I'm going to get punished in some way by the people that I want in my life. And and I never thought about that until you were talking. So it's been really, that was my takeaway from it. And I say that too for any listeners who they may people please, but the punishment or the consequence would be something different. So yeah, it's just something to think about how it would affect you if you say no. But I haven't practiced saying no yet. So
that will be our goal for the rest of the month. Say no.
Say no.
I'm not going to do that. I'm saying no to you now. So
Look at you
starting now.
I'm just kidding.
yeah.
Oh man, I love that. I love that.
All right, so we'll switch gears a little bit. I feel like I've taken some notes though on steps, actionable steps in terms of people pleasing.
That's awesome.
But I guess up until this point, what has been kind of your biggest motivation or inspiration to keep you going on this track?
Okay. You're gonna think I'm like, how do I say this? Okay, my biggest motivation is getting to the end of my life and looking back and being like, wow, I really didn't take that step because I was scared to do it. Like, really? And I've kind of like, that's my biggest motivator. My second biggest motivator is I really truly believe that I'm put here to help other people significantly in whatever capacity that unfolds, and however it sort of manifests in my life. I'm open to everything, but I really, really believe that. And what I've noticed is the more that I grow, the more that I continue on, the more that I take a next step. And I've even noticed this like with my clients, current and past clients, who will come back and be like, I tried to go backwards and it wasn't possible. You know what I mean? It's like, once you start going so far ahead, you can't go back to the place that you were before. It's impossible. Like, I've tried to go back and it's just like, so I'll give you an example. I'll just put myself on blast on here. Okay. So I was saying at the beginning of the podcast that I used to be a really gossipy person, right? And so I was a gossipy person because I would get triggered by people who, when I didn't feel like they liked me. Okay. And so something happened this week where it was just such a silly thing that happened. It was like so small, but it triggered me completely. And so I ended up telling a friend, and I said something that was gossipy, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, okay. So I immediately like messaged, I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm so sorry for saying that. I really did not mean to say that. That is not the kind of like person I want to be, the energy that I want. Like, I don't want any of that. It's like, I'm really sorry. And like, I take it back. Like, you know what I mean? And I think it's like being able to catch yourself. That's how you grow. You know what I mean? Like, catch yourself in what you're, if you really want to change your life, like, you have to hold yourself accountable. Right. But to go back to your original question, I was just thinking about like, you know, every time that I've made a step forward, every time I've done something different, every time that I've tried, you know, something new, it's nearly impossible to ever go back to the way that it was before, because you've grown too much now, you know, too much now, you know what I mean? Like, you've progressed too much. And so how do you go backwards when you've done that? But then also, you know, I've tried to like take myself out of the way that society should be. Okay. And I've kind of like, how do I explain this? Like, I kind of like rejected the idea that in order to be successful in life, you need to like work a job that you hate, spend time doing what you hate, and all this different stuff. It's taken me a really long time to get to that point to be able to accept that. But I literally think all the time, like, you can literally die today. So why would you ever waste time on things that are not soul fulfilling to you, or something that you really want to do? But I think we take for granted that, you know, tomorrow will come. I truly, truly believe that. And when you take that for granted, you're giving yourself like almost like an excuse to stay stuck. Because if you knew that tomorrow was going to come and tomorrow was the last day that you were here, I bet you would like totally live your life differently.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
I've tried to like live my life that way, that, if I need to get another job one day, it better be something that I love doing, because I don't want to go and spend my time somewhere else. If I don't know, like if it's not going to bring me joy,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day,
Mhm.
life is just too short. It
Mhm.
really,
Yeah.
really, really is.
Mhm.
It really is. Not to get all morbid on you or anything.
Very
No, but
morbid. No.
yeah.
But this is how my brain works. Like I literally
Yeah.
think about, like, and I've heard this a couple times before, a long time ago when I first started my self-development, personal journey, whatever. I was listening to a bunch of podcasts, and I was listening to this guy, and he was saying the exact same thing. Like, oh, like, do you really want to get to the end of your life and like, be, like regretting all the things that you didn't do? And at the time I didn't get it. I was like, okay, that's so dramatic. Like, but now I get it. I'm like, no, every day is an opportunity to actually and literally create a new reality for yourself. And so you just have to choose it. You just have to want it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's such a great perspective, because it puts some like urgency behind it. Whereas I think sometimes we feel like we have all the time in the world. It's like, oh, I'll do that next week, or I'll do that next month. Whereas if you're like, there may not be a next week, there's more urgency to get up and be like, nope, I'm doing this today.
Exactly.
And moves you along. I'm a expert procrastinator, so I know all about
You know what?
about
I
that.
am too, so it's okay. I'm a procrastinator also in terms of like, like I have to put the tasks on a piece of paper and like check them off. You know what I mean? Like I have to.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's not going to get done until next year.
At all.
Like,
Yeah.
Like I even write down like, do my face mask tonight. I can't do things if I don't. It's gotten bad. Like my brain's addicted.
I didn't know it was that far, Selena.
It's gone really far. But what I was gonna say to that too, I have a reminder in my phone that goes off like once a week, and it's where do you want to be in 40 years? And I know that sounds dramatic, but I'm like, my life expectancy is 50 more years actually, but at least at 4, like you said, I don't know, like it could be tomorrow, knock on wood, but just say I do live that 40, 50 more years. And I want to, because I looked back at my life now and the X amount of years I've lived. And I'm like, I wasted so much time and I'm not where I would want to be. And it's not like, it's like you have your 5-year plan and your 10-year plan, but that stuff is really important and to help you take those little steps. And that's what motivates me today. Yeah. Listen, I'm not perfect. I still mess up. I still procrastinate, all that. I'm human, but I'm better than I used to be before I thought about my life in that way. And I think you have to find whatever works for you. If that's what you want out of life. If you don't, fine. Like you said earlier, don't push people into wanting things for themselves. They want what they want. And so this is not anything to push any listener to say, you should want this, or you should have your life planned out for 40 years. But if you do feel like that, because I used to feel this sense of like, I didn't know what to do with my life and unfulfilled and like a hole, that hole, it was like a void inside of me. And now that I think about my life, I know I want to be in a certain position at a certain time. Then it makes me think, what are the necessary small steps along the way? And no matter how small they are, there's still steps along the way. And you have that vision and you just keep remembering it. But I think it's so important for me, and I hope it helps someone else to just think about it in that way. Like, what can I do today to be where I want to be in X amount of years? And that's what helps. That's what like kind of pushes the urgency or pushes me. But that's been really helpful too. And I hope that's along with what you're saying.
2000%. 2000%. And I was even thinking as you're saying that, like, and maybe you'll relate to this because you're a podcaster. I also have a podcast. If you think about like, even how do you want your podcast to grow? For example, let's say you want to have 500,000 downloads. Okay. Maybe if you're just starting out, like even like years from now, like maybe that's not like, what will actually happen. But the fact that you've put the goal out there and you've said that that's what you want, regardless if it takes 2 years or 10 years, you'll always work and show up for your podcast because that's your goal. Do you know what I mean? Like you'll always hold yourself accountable to that thing because that's where you want to go and that's where you want to be. And like you're saying, like we don't know the timeline, like you can plan it, but also being open to it not going the way that we plan, but always having like that driving idea and like the reason why. Otherwise, honestly, you just spin, you know, not you specifically, I say you, and I like just mean like everybody.
Yeah.
But like you just constantly go in like circles, right? Like we're saying, like writing things down and like checking things off when you've completed them. If you're not doing that, then it's like, I'll just do it tomorrow. And it's like, but you're not going to do it tomorrow.
Exactly.
You know?
Mhm.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And just to sum up and I wanted to bring up to anybody listening and to you, like, and that was also so I won't have hopefully I won't have as many regrets in 40 years as I did after this amount of years.
Yeah.
I wasted so much time doing XYZ and like, what can I do differently now? Because all the choices I made got me to where I am here now. And I didn't like that space. So what are the things I can do every single day that'll get me there, and I'll have less regrets along the way? Does that make sense? So that was part of it I wanted to bring up too, because I had so many regrets. So that's the way I kind of like shifted it, if that makes sense.
Really interesting that you say that, because I was literally having a conversation with somebody today about this exact same thing. And he was saying that it's really like, I tend to coach a lot of men, which is really interesting. I mean, I don't think it really matters, but you know, most people are geared towards like one specific gender. And I'm just like, hi, I will help you. Like, you know what I mean? All good. Anyway, so I was talking to him today and he sent me a message and he was like, I just have like so many regrets from how much time I've wasted in my life. And I was thinking about this, and I've been thinking about it all day today. So it's just so crazy that you literally bring up the same thing. And it's kind of like, you didn't have the perspective then that you do now. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't, what's important to you now wasn't important to you then. Maybe some things are, but not the way that you live your life now is different than before. And I mean, we don't know each other. I don't know about your life in your past, but you know, at the end of the day, like, it's about being able to accept all of those pieces for what they are and like how they happened, because if they didn't happen that way, maybe you never would have had this realization. Do you know what I mean? And maybe you would have woken up in 40 years and been like, what? Like, where did I just, you know?
Yeah. And I think going off that, I feel like perspective makes such a big difference, because I've definitely made some bad decisions, but I don't regret them in a sense where I'm just like, you should have, like you said, you should have done this a different way. But it's like, how did I grow? How did I learn? And I feel like some of those bad decisions put me in a different direction than where I probably would have ended up. So it's being able to reflect and, you know, kind of see that perspective of like, all right, this was a really, really stupid decision, Iman, but look at where you're at now.
Exactly.
So I think, yeah, sometimes we don't give ourselves credit for how much we have overcome. And I know I've known Selena for a while, so I'm like, she's, you know, I know we're our worst critics sometimes, but I'm like, I feel like you've done well for yourself. So give you a pat on the back.
I love this. That's awesome.
Side note.
I love it.
Thank you. So switching gears a little bit, what is something you hope people say about you when you're not in the room?
I love that question. And honestly, I had never really thought about it before. I honestly hope that people would say that I'm kind and that I'm accepting, and that I would say like kind and accepting are two things that are both really, really important for me, because you never know what someone has experienced. You don't know people's past. You don't know, you know, people's traumas, what hurt somebody, like you don't know. And so, I mean, I live by this one saying, and I don't even know where it came from. Like, I may have made it up. I may have read it somewhere. I honestly don't remember, but it's essentially, it's like, always leave people a little better than you found them. And so it's like, how can you extend that? So I really hope that people would say that, you know, I'm a kind person. I think would be really nice.
Yeah. And I guess you talked a little bit about it earlier, but the whole part of the podcast is redefining success and what success means for each individual person. So for you, what is success, and when are you kind of at your happiest place?
You know what? It's so funny because I used to think that success was like a specific amount of money that I've made per year, or attaining a certain level of like position in a job that I was in, or all of that kind of stuff. And then as I continued to like learn and grow, I've really sort of redefined what success means for myself. And I would say now that success is inner peace. And what I mean by that is being very at peace with your decisions, being at peace with what you allow into your space versus what you're putting boundaries around. You know, it's not all about what you do, it's about why you do it. And so I think that, success looks different for everybody, and being able to accept that success looks different for everyone. But for me, it really comes down to this idea of inner peace and like inner acceptance. Like when you can feel at home with yourself, I feel like you've made it. You know what I mean? Because there's so many people who never get to feel what that feels like. Even if it's a temporary feeling, because I have good days, I have bad days, I have, days where I feel terrible about myself, or I don't feel good enough. And it's just part of the journey. It's part of the process, right? But when you take the significance of like success of what you are versus who you are, like who you are is so important, because who you are will get you what you want to where you want to go. But when you can show up as like your full self all the time and be just very like empowered and at peace with who you are, that would be success for me.
Yeah. I love like at home with yourself.
Yeah.
I've never heard it put that way. I love that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like that's the first definition I've heard like that, and I love it.
I love that. I love that.
That's really good. Not that you need me to tell you that it's good, but
like I like the validation. I'm just kidding. I'm
like,
a people pleaser. Remember, I'm like, okay, it's good. Okay, no, I'm just kidding.
And this is a little different too, but like they say your inner circle is important. What qualities do people have to be in your inner circle?
Ooh, I love that. Okay, so now the qualities, okay, I think the biggest quality is acceptance of other people, of who they are, how they're feeling, why they're feeling that way, what they're interested in, why they're interested in it. I think another thing would be humor, like being able to laugh, being able to like enjoy and like joke around. I would say though, oh my gosh, like I just feel like acceptance is just such a big one, and I don't have space in like my life anymore for the gossipy people, or people who like are just like wanting to talk negative all the time, or talk about other people and this and that. And it's like, sometimes people got to go, you know what I mean? Because they just don't like, so, and it's sad. It's hard, but it kind of just is. And it just happens that way. But yeah, I would definitely say just, I don't know. I don't even know if that's a good answer. Like, I'm kind of feeling like maybe it could be better, but I'm really thinking that like acceptance, because here's why. Like in the year, like this last year has been a roller coaster of all of the different things that have happened. Well, 2020, not 2021, but even still into 2021, like still has been a ride. Like, and so if you can't extend compassion and kindness and understanding, and like learning new things and unlearning all of the things that maybe you like thought growing up, being accepting of other people, like I just honestly, like the world needs more empathy, like the world needs more kindness and all of that. And I just think that it's so important.
I have a follow-up question. Did you, when it comes to friends, so say somebody in your inner circle, they are being like, they're not accepting, they're being super judgmental, they're being gossipy, but there's other sides to them, or maybe you don't know. What would make you keep a friend and call them out, and versus you gotta go? Like,
I think
deal with this.
Like you kind of like you kind of took the words out of my mouth right there, because I honestly think the first step is even being able to call them out. Because if you can't call them out, then you're just going to constantly sit there and be like, I don't want to talk to you. Like, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to call the person out of what it is that, but then I also think like it has to, the timing has to be right. Do you know what I mean? Like you have to think about like what the best timing is for that conversation to happen and to take place. And just I think just being transparent about like, listen, like this is not like these specific things made me feel this way. I was upset when you said this, and I am like, I just don't want to have that in my life anymore. And so I just want to let you know, and like kind of like balls in your court. You know what I mean? Like if you want to change, like you can make some changes, but it's kind of about having that sort of like conversation. Does that help?
Yeah. Because I feel like, I don't know, I know in the last few years, a lot of my friends have called me out, and I was really grateful for it. Instead of thinking it or talking behind my back or just cutting me off, and I've cut people off too. And I was like, maybe I could have just said, hey, this isn't cool, and everything could have been fine. So I think about that a lot recently. So yeah, I was just curious, like, is that something we even think about now? Like, instead of just saying kaputs, is that the right word? Just like, no. Yeah, I think it's important sometimes, and give people a chance. Like you didn't even try. Maybe they didn't know that was something they were doing. And people, like I said, I've been lucky enough to have people call me out on stuff. I was like, I didn't even know I was doing that. And now that I'm aware of it, because we don't see ourselves from the outside, we're never, ever going to.
No.
So and you have people who know you and care about you, and they're coming from a loving place, and they're like, I gotta tell you something. I think
it's so true. Yeah, it's so true. I love that you said that, because because you just said like you're grateful that other people gave you the opportunity to like realize and make and realize like what was happening, and you're like, oh, now I can change this, right? And if like on the flip side, like if you don't give that chance to somebody else, you don't give somebody else the chance to to do that either. And so yeah, it totally makes perfect sense, and it comes back to that. And I think that it's so important.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. What is I guess in terms changing gears a little bit, but what is some advice that you would give to listeners that want to do something similar, starting a podcast, maybe going into life coaching? What's some advice that you would give?
I love that question. I would say, if you want to do something in your life, just do it. And I know it sounds like such a simple answer, and it's like, okay, Simona, like, yes, just do it. You know what I mean? But it's like, why not do it? You know what I mean? Like, you have nothing to lose by trying, and any type of failure is just a redirection into where you're meant to go. But you'll never know your true potential, or like tap into all the gifts that you don't even know that you have, if you don't give if you don't give yourself the chance to start. So if you give yourself the chance to start, if I look back, like, did I think 2 years ago that I would have 2 businesses by starting a podcast? No way. Like, never. I never would have envisioned that for myself. But once you just start and take some action towards it, like, it can feel overwhelming. There's so many different things to learn. So if the overwhelm is what's getting you down, or if the overwhelm is what's making you not start, find ways that you can get help. Even just ask questions. Like, send me a message, send me a DM. If you're wanting to go into life coaching or podcasting, my DMs are always open. You can send me a message, send me an email. I'm happy to chat with you through it. You know what I mean? Because we all need someone to help us. Like, I didn't get where I am by myself. It's all about community, right? It's all about community and supporting each other and building friends in the space that you want to be in.
Yeah. And then with success in our society, and like everyone's like, I did this, I did that, but they never talk about like the small steps in the day-to-day. Like, what were you doing on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? So like for you, what's a routine or something that you can give our listeners or us, something tangible to be able to manage businesses and like just managing our time and like, what do you just do from day to day?
I love that. So I would first say, think about like, what are your goals in terms of if it's a business or if it's a podcast or if it's a different entrepreneurial venture that you're going into, whatever. Think about like what your goal is for that particular thing. And then figure out, I have like a whole like goal planning thing that I do and like what have you. But in any case, think about how do your tasks for the week like support where you want to go and like your growth. So for example, like my biggest challenge is like exercising. I used to go to the gym all the time. The gym hasn't been open since March. So like I have a really hard time exercising. So what did I do? I decided to create a morning routine that allowed me to accomplish all of the things that I know are good for me, but I never make time for because quote unquote, I'm too busy. Mm-hmm. So I wake up in the morning and I do a meditation. I do a workout, and then I do like a live series on my Instagram every single morning at 9 a.m. Eastern time. And by having that 9 a.m. Eastern time commitment to the people who are hopping on my live, then I'm, then I'm being accountable to somebody else as well. And then you kind of have to show up, right? Mm-hmm. But I know I'm not going to be my best self and I'm not going to bring my best foot forward if I don't do my meditation and if I don't do my workout, because then I'm just going to feel sluggish all day. I'm just going to feel like garbage. So it's like, why would I not do that? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then in terms of like structuring my day, so I first look at like the projects that I need to get done in the week for my business, like for my coaching business. And then I also look at what do my clients need this week from my podcast production business. And I block in the time to do like the bigger tasks. So if I know I'm going to need 3 hours to edit one particular podcast, I start blocking it in so that there's enough time for them to receive it on their end, right? So it's about like, I'm a huge fan of like time blocking chunks of time so that you have dedicated space that you know that nothing else is going to come in that space. I even like, this doesn't sound crazy, but when I was working in corporate, I even would time block like, okay, driving home, dinner, whatever, catch up with whoever into my calendar. And then I knew that like from 8 o'clock, I'm like, okay, and it's kind of like, you don't want to make it too structured and too routine, but at the same time, like, time is such a precious resource. Because I know me, if I don't do that, I'm going to watch Netflix all night. And then I'm going to kick myself the next day where I'm like, I have all this stuff that I need to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same.
So I would say time blocking is key. Time blocking is really key.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
I like that advice. And I feel like, because I have to do it all the time for I we call it the diary where we time block everything. So it's like, why not time block the things that you enjoy as well? So if it's catching up with a friend, because I think sometimes when you're so busy, at least for me, I feel like some of the relationships kind of get pushed to the side, or it's like, oh, I have all these other things I need to do, but like you can block out 30 minutes to catch up with a friend or something like that.
Exactly. And like, so, like I love to go for walks in the middle of the day, like when it's sunny or whatever, like, or even in the evening. And I'm like, you know what, let me just use this time to like call a friend, you know what I mean? So, the other night I went for a walk for like 2 hours and I was talking with 1 hour and I was talking with one of my friends and it was an amazing conversation. And it's just like in those little moments, like choosing to do something differently that's going to, bring you joy, because ultimately at the end of the day, like life is meant to be enjoyed. You know what I mean? You're meant to enjoy your time. You're meant to enjoy the things that you do every single day. So if you're not enjoying it, then kind of what's the point? You know what I mean? Yeah. And relationships are important. So
well, I think we're winding down. That went so fast.
I know.
It did. Like, that was a quick hour.
Betty.
Time flies.
It does. It really does.
Do you guys have anything else? Anything you want to leave the listeners with?
I would say if I could give any advice to the listeners to take into your day every single day is like I said before, leave people a little better than you found them. How can you extend kindness? How can you be more grateful? How can you, show gratitude to people? How can you just be more present? You know what I mean? Like if you're talking to your significant other or a friend or a loved one, instead of just being like, yeah, okay, like how can you just be more present in that moment? Because on the receiving end of someone who appreciates your time, like being with someone, okay, let me backtrack that. Being on the receiving end of someone being really present and appreciating the time that you're spending together feels so good, because that person is like actually cares. You know what I mean? So I think in everything that you do, just extend your values always, be kind, be grateful, and always leave people a little better than you found them.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah, so good. Sorry we had to end so abruptly. I didn't see that hour creeping up on us.
All good. Don't worry.
It did creep. It was just such a great conversation. It just went by fast.
Loved this. This was awesome.
So we're going to close out. Sorry, and I want to make sure I'm saying your name right. I know we asked about your last name, but let's talk about your first name.
Simona.
Simona. I love that name too.
It's so pretty.
Thank you.
That's how I was gonna say it, but I didn't want to. Assuming makes it, you know what? So, thank you, Simona, for sharing your time with us and inspiring our listeners to redefine success for themselves. Remember, you can find Simona at, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Simona _Costantini. It's a long one, so good luck. No, I'm just kidding. And my website is simonacostantini.com. And honestly, all my links are on my Instagram though. So once you go there, then you can get my podcast. It's called the Happiness Happens podcast. And yeah, you can get my podcast. You can get YouTube and my Facebook group and all the other fun things. So yeah.
And it'll be in the show notes. So check the show notes, everybody, YouTube and on Apple and all that. You'll see how to spell it.
Amazing. I love it. Thank you so much for having me on today. This was awesome.
Of course. And of course, thank you, listeners. We could not do this without you. Remember to hit like, comment, and share this episode. Please leave a review. We always love your feedback. And remember to subscribe at U Plus Happy Podcast, which is on YouTube and Instagram at U Plus Happy.
We'll see you next week, same time, same place. And we ask our guests to say our tagline, which is very long, but here it comes.
It is very long.
Okay.
All right. Get ready.
It's like a game show. Are you ready?
I'm ready. What's the prize? No, I'm just kidding.
We'll show you our definition of success if you show us yours.
We'll show you our definition of success if you show us yours.
Hey!
You got it on the first try.
Amazing.
Yes.
Awesome.
So good.
It's been so great having you on.
Thank you so much. It was so awesome being on and chatting with you both and meeting you. And thank you again so much for the invite. I'm really grateful. So thank you.
Of course.
Yes, thank you for being here. It was a pleasure.
Amazing. Thank you.